peu plus qui est fait. Et donc, on va la passer comme on l'a fait la dernière fois avec le texte. Et puis, il y a un moment où je passerai je vous traduirai directement de façon un peu résumée. Voilà, hein, donc ça prendra un peu plus de temps, mais on prendra le temps qu'il faut. C'est très intéressant comme interview. En le réécoutant, j'ai vu que moi-même, je n'avais pas forcément compris certaines choses parce que ça allait vite. Et donc, on prendra le temps de faire ça. Voilà. Hein, donc, voilà. Alors.
Il faut noter, Jacques, que j'ai fait exprès de multiplier les questions cette fois, vu que Tenzin Palmo nous accorde une interview chaque 2 mois. Donc, je me suis dit, au lieu de lui poser 12 questions, j'ai préparé 18, donc 1 fois et demi.
Mais c'est ce qu'ils appellent lui tirer les verres du nez.
Ouais.
Mais elle aime bien ça.
Elle a accepté
quand elle allait voir.
Et
Elle disait que quand elle revenait de sa grotte et qu'elle allait voir son maître, le 8e, les Kamtrul Rinpoche, et lui demandait où est votre liste de questions. Et puis il répondait à toutes les questions.
Ouais. Elle aime déjà être questionnée et de toute façon, elle a accepté avec grand plaisir. Elle m'a dit, au lieu d'1 heure, on peut parler pendant 1h30, ce qui est génial. Surtout ce qu'on prépare et ce qu'on distribue au moment même, c'est plutôt les thèmes, les grandes lignes des questions. Il y a beaucoup de questions suscitées par ces réponses. Donc, une fois qu'elle parle, je tire beaucoup de questions qui ne sont pas déjà notées. Et ça, ce qui est important, parce que ça donne un peu de vivacité. Ce n'est pas un interview comme ça, standardisé. Non, il y a vraiment un dialogue, un vrai dialogue.
Oui. Alors.
On a eu un texte, une fois qu'on transcrit cette interview, c'est un texte assez riche, assez important. Et voilà, si on continue dans la collecte de ce genre d'interviews, on pourra en sortir un livre, soit en anglais, soit en français, même en arabe. Ça sera vraiment…
Oui, et Tenzin Palmo était intéressée par un livre en arabe parce qu'elle disait qu'il y a très peu de choses sur le dharma en arabe. Et donc, voilà, elle est assez synthétique et assez accessible. Donc, c'est vrai que ce serait un bon travail.
Oui, donc dès qu'on a le texte transcrit de cette interview, je vais faire de sorte à le traduire en arabe. Ce sera le 3e texte d'elle en arabe. Et comme ça, on continue à fur et à mesure on pourra collecter vraiment la matière d'un livre assez consistant. Et là, je note qu'il y a des…
Voilà, donc… très bien, donc je pense que là, on est prêt à partir. Voilà, donc je vais mettre la flèche blanche pour suivre le texte. Et puis, au bout d'1 heure environ, il y aura, enfin, ou 3/4 d'heure, je reprendrai en direct la traduction. Voilà.
On the one hand, we are happy that Westerners are interested in non-duality. On the other hand, we have the feeling that they lay the basis to go far in this field. What do you think about it?
Well, you know, the problem is that nowadays, people, they want to build the golden roof on the temple, but they are not interested in the floor and the walls which will support that golden roof. And so, you know, until we understand duality, in other words, until we understand our own conceptual thinking mind, you know, we will not be able to stabilize and to sustain any glimpse we might have of the non-duality, right? Because our mind has no basis. You know, we have no real practice. And so therefore, you know, what is non-duality? Non-duality is our primordial awareness. It is the fundamental consciousness, our innate divinity within us, which is wisdom and compassion by nature. That we all have. And that goes beyond separation of me and others. It's when that sense of duality falls away, right? That's why it's called non-duality. There is a sense of interconnection with everything, all nature, all living beings on this planet and in the universe. But we cannot, people get glimpses, you know, suddenly they realize that whole ideas which they have built on their dualistic perception is all wrong. But because we don't have the basis, we haven't gone step by step, we cannot sustain that realization. And so this is why it's very important to understand our ordinary everyday consciousness and understand what is a thought, what is a feeling, how we think, in order to be able to maintain the realization, the genuine realization, which goes beyond the dualistic nature of the mind. So this is the thing. This is why, you know, there should be a progression, right? Like climbing a ladder. You know, you don't start at the top rung. You have to start at the bottom and climb up.
But how to practice non-duality, Jitsumna, practically?
Forget about non-duality. Understand duality. And then from that, the mind will of itself open up into another level of consciousness. But if we haven't got everyday awareness, if we don't have everyday mindful awareness, we're never going to get to that level of primordial awareness. Or as I say, if we get a glimpse of it, we don't know how to sustain it. So we have to start from where we are. You know, everybody wants the highest, but you know, you can't get the highest until you've gotten the basis in learning how to tame the mind, how to make the mind more calm, more clear, more, you know, to be able to have a mind which is not the usual monkey mind running around all over the place, right? We have to tame the mind, and through taming the mind, then we can train the mind. Training the mind transforms the mind. And by transforming the mind, eventually we will transcend our normal conceptual thinking mind. But it has to go in stages. We can't just immediately get to the top of the mountain when we haven't even got to base camp, right? We haven't even got all our equipment for climbing.
Jitsumna, we are quoting you in many questions of this interview. We took it from a book compiled by our professor, Jacques Vigne. And from these quotes, we are discussing and asking you many questions. You say, for example, if one has a purified mind, it is better to be a tiger than a rabbit. Can you elaborate this?
Okay, so normally it is, you know, in all Buddhist traditions, we are trying to overcome the negative, the afflictive emotions like our anger, our greed, pride, jealousy, and our fundamental egotistic ignorance. And so we are trying to uproot those and transform them into their opposites. But in the tantric tradition, then it is understood that the root, the source of these negative emotions like greed and anger, their source is actually a very powerful wisdom energy. And so therefore, for example, anger, the other side of anger is what is called mirror-like wisdom. So if one can recognize that source at the moment of anger arising, if one sees nakedly into the source, it transforms of itself into a very powerful wisdom energy. But it's like how can I say, if we can control that energy, then it is very powerful. But it's like trying to drive a Ferrari. If you don't know how to drive, you're going to crash, you know. So better to go on a bicycle. At least if you fall off the bicycle, you won't kill yourself. So that's the point. Most people are not able to control such a powerful car. We start with something very, very simple, like trying to recognize our negative emotions and transform them into something positive. But for great practitioners, then that power of having very powerful emotions, if we are in control of them, not controlled by them, then that is a much more, takes us much higher, much faster. And in that way, it's better to be like a tiger, wild, than to be like a nice, placid little rabbit.
But Jetsuna, mostly people, they take tiger as a symbol of anger. And you are telling that it is better to be a tiger than a rabbit.
The tiger here is not a symbol of anger, it's a symbol of power. You know, tigers are very powerful. You know, whereas rabbits are sweet, but they're a bit ineffectual, you know. And so that's just a symbol that those with very powerful emotions, if they are totally in control of the emotions and recognize the actual source of the emotions, then they are much more likely to gain great realizations on the spiritual path, rather than somebody who's very sweet and placid, but pretty ineffectual. So this is an encouragement for people who have very strong emotions, negative emotions, and feel that that makes them bad people. If we are in control of those emotions, actually that is spiritually beneficial. But it doesn't mean that we just then can be angry and lustful, and that's a good thing. And that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the essential nature of that very strong emotion is actually something very powerful and could be used for a great spiritual benefit if one is in control and not controlled by.
Excuse-moi, Jacques, on n'a pas la traduction en français.
Things which normally would be regarded as an obstacle and use them as a means for realization.
Jetsuna, one had a feeling that observing one's sensations or the contents of the mind is an endless process. Can a strong shamatha, a strong meditation practice, help to get out of this endless bubbling?
Yes, of course. I mean, that is the idea. Shamatha, or calm abiding meditation, is intended to eventually calm the mind. In the beginning, when we start, then of course, for example, if we are sitting and watching the breath, breathing in, breathing out, then often instead of becoming more calm, it seems like the mind is more wild than ever. And people complain, I have more thoughts now I'm trying to meditate than before. But of course, this is not true. It just means we're becoming more conscious of these thoughts. We always have lots and lots of thoughts, but normally we don't notice it because we're swept along by the thoughts. So we are learning how to acquire attention on single pointed concentration, right? That's what shamatha is all about. Now, eventually, if we just, you know, we get carried away by the thoughts, we bring the thoughts back to the object of concentration, like the breath. Slowly, the mind begins to quieten down and our attention span begins to increase. We can stay with the object longer and longer. And the background noise, like having a television on, right? But you're reading a book. Yeah. So even though the television is on in the background, our attention is on what we're reading. We're just ignoring. We're not turning the television off, but we are ignoring the television, the noise coming from the television. So likewise, we ignore all the thoughts in the background because our attention is on the object, like our breath or sound or whatever. So gradually, the mind begins to calm down. And at the same time, we are cultivating the mindful awareness. We are cultivating the ability to observe and to know. And instead of being, you know, the problem is that we normally, when we think, we're swept along by our thoughts, right? It's like a river in which we are submerged in the river and just running along. Now we are stepping out of the river, right? We're not stopping the river, we're not damming the river, but we are not in the river. We're sitting on the banks watching the river. And that in itself is an enormous step forward in our mind, that we now have some space in there because we are not swept along and identified with our thoughts, but we are observing. This is not ultimate reality, but it is very important to be able to observe the thoughts without being the thoughts, right? And we recognize then that we are not the thoughts because we can observe them, right? So that begins to calm the mind down. The more we can stand back and observe the thinking without judgments, without trying to change anything, just knowing the thoughts, naturally, gradually, the mind begins to, like if you're looking at, you know, people who are playing around and messing around, but they suddenly notice that people are watching them, then, you know, they start to put themselves, you know, in better order and stop messing around. So the mind, when it sees it is being observed, naturally begins to, of itself, you know, correct itself and calm down a bit and be much more under control. We need to become the masters of our mind. This is the problem. We are the slaves of our thoughts and our feelings. We need to be in control.
Is there some criteria, Jetsunma, to know is this monkey, you say, you just talk about this monkey mind. How to know that it is this agitation is less, or our monkey mind is still less in movement?
Well, you know, as the mind, as I say, you know, we have to tame the monkey and stop letting the monkey be the master, because the monkey is not very intelligent. In fact, the monkey is very ignorant and causes lots of problems. You let a monkey into your room and it will destroy the room in no time. So if you have a quiet monkey, then they would sit there quietly and they won't destroy the room. So this is the point, that we need to tame our mind. As the Buddha said, a well-tamed mind brings happiness, you know? That's the point, that we feel inwardly a sense of peace and a sense of clarity in our thinking. You know, we are no longer dominated by all our thoughts. We can observe the thoughts without being swept along by them anymore. This is already a big, big step forward to get space in our mind and a kind of quiet, silent, knowing quality in the mind, instead of being caught up in all the noise. And really, once we look at the mind, we see how very boring the mind is. You know, always thinking the same old thoughts, coming up with the same old memories, having the same old opinions. We're not very original. And so we stop being so fascinated by our thoughts, because we see that they're mostly just soap operas which are being repeated again and again. This is not who we really are.
One sage told about this topic, we have to be clever and know what the monkey is searching. It is searching a banana, so you should give him this banana, which is happiness or something like that. What do you think?
I think then he just wants more bananas. And I mean, if you see monkeys in a tree with fruit, what they do is they pull down one fruit, they bite it, they throw it down, they pull another fruit down. Before you know it, they've wrecked the tree. And underneath is all this half-eaten fruit. So don't put any control in the hands of monkeys, right? Monkeys have to learn that they are not the master, right? It doesn't work. I mean, however much you feed the monkey, he's never going to be satisfied. And he's just going to wreak destruction everywhere he goes. So don't put him in charge.
Jetsuma, the Buddha said the karma of anger is 8 times worse than that of desire. But it is more difficult to detach oneself from desire than from anger. That's what Lord Buddha says. Can you elaborate this?
Yes, I mean, the point is that when we are very angry, if we have a lot of anger in our heart, then we are not comfortable. We make enemies, people don't like us, we're always fighting with people, and basically we're not happy. So we'd like to get rid of anger. You know, many times people ask, how do I overcome my anger? And there are many, many books on how to overcome anger. Because everybody would like not to be angry, right? They recognize it doesn't make them happy and it causes lots and lots of problems. But desire is much more tricky because we think when we get the object of our desire, we think we are happy. And therefore, obviously, the more we can desire and gratify.
Jacques, bonjour Jacques. Est-ce que tu peux rétablir le son? Il n'y a plus de son.
Here and here, this little, very sweet. But when I got these stones, and I thought, I have to pull these up because otherwise they will unbalance the stones. Yeah. So I started to try to pull up these little flowers and they wouldn't come up. However hard I pulled, they wouldn't come up. And then I got a pickaxe and I started, you know, digging down to see where are the roots of these little flowers. And eventually I dug up the whole of the patio because underneath, on the surface of these little flowers, underneath was this whole huge root system, thick roots like that, all interconnected. And all you saw was these very innocent little flowers. And I thought, that is like desire. It looks very innocent on the surface, but it's very deep, thick roots inside our psyche. And so it's very, very difficult to uproot desire.
So how to approach it in practical ways?
Well, I mean, you know, actually speaking, through mindfulness, through being aware of the mind, we can see that every sensory sensation which we receive through our eyes, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch, everything gives us, we respond to it immediately with either we like it or we don't like it. This comes out later in one of your questions also. It's very important. Often it's so quick we don't even notice it. It's not a very strong sensation, but actually everything we see, we immediately have a pleasure or non-pleasure reaction to it. And if it's pleasant, if it's strong enough, if it's pleasant, then greed arises, desire, I like it, I want it. Or if it's unpleasant, then I don't like it, it's not nice. Aversion, irritation. Immediately, there's this anger and desire, greed, they automatically come up. And if we don't do anything about it, then we find that influences all our actions, right? To grasp at what we like and to have aversion for what we don't like. People, things, food, sounds, everything. So we have to be aware. We have to be aware of this as it comes up and then make our decision. Are we going to act on this or not act on this? Is it worthwhile acting on it? Is it useful or not useful? In this way also we become in control of our own mind. You know, I mean, the whole point is that usually we're driven along by our thoughts and our feelings and our reactions, and we are the slaves to our impulses instead of being in control of our own mind.
Some teachers who call themselves Buddhists openly state or imply that they do not believe in the law of karma. Do you think this is right?
Well, you know, nowadays many Westerners are drawn to the Dharma, to Buddhism, because, you know, Buddhism talks, especially in the West, people, you know, when they think of Buddhism, they think of meditation.
Yeah.
It's not true in Asia, but in the West, this is how it is. And mindfulness now has become very popular, and also, of course, a lot of talk about compassion and loving kindness. And Buddhism is fairly logical and rational, you know, so therefore people are attracted towards it. But the problem is that they want Buddhism to fit in with their own preconceptions. You know, they don't really want to stretch their mind beyond what feels comfortable within their own comfort zone of what they believe and don't believe. Because in the West, mostly people don't believe in rebirth and karma. Therefore, they feel that that's something alien to them. You know, this is something Asians believe in, but not something which rational Westerners have to believe in. Which is fine. I feel that's fine, except when they start to say, because I don't believe in it, therefore the Buddha didn't believe in it. And all the millions of references to karma and rebirth in the texts, and all the teachings from the time of the Buddha through all the masters up to the present day are based on misconception. They're all wrong. You know, I'm right because I don't believe it, therefore obviously Buddha didn't believe it either. That, I think, is going too far. Because just because you don't believe it doesn't mean that the Buddha has to believe what you believe. I mean, we're ignorant. We don't know anything. You know, the Buddha was fully enlightened. And many masters that followed him were fully enlightened. And they say karma and rebirth exists because they have seen it. And so how can we say, no, it doesn't exist because I don't happen to believe it. It doesn't fit in with my preconceptions. So actually the point in Buddhism is this whole idea of samsara, Samsara meaning like a cycle of birth, death, rebirth, re-death, rebirth, rebirth, that we have to try to break through. You know, it's a wheel going round and round and round. If you throw out karma and rebirth, then it's no longer a wheel. You're born and then you die, so it's linear, right? That whole idea of a cycle, endless cycle, which is what we have to go beyond, doesn't exist. I live my life, and then when I die, that's it, finished. Then, you know, and in Buddhism, as you know, because Buddhism is non-theistic, therefore there's no idea of a creator God outside who is willing what's going to happen to us, and at the end is going to judge how we managed it. So karma says, well, no, what happens to us is the result of actions which we ourselves have committed in the past, and how we respond to what is happening to us now is moment to moment creating our future. So that there is also still a justice there. There is a balance there between doing good things and doing you know, evil things. There's a reason why things happen to us. It's not just arbitrary. But if you throw out karma and rebirth, then there's no reason why anything happens. Things just happen, and then how we respond to it is just, you know, for this time now. So why not just be comfortable, be good, be kind, and, you know, help ourselves, help others. Why strive to go beyond all of that? There's no incentive. You know, it's all going to finish anyway when we die. Then, you know, what's the point? I mean, from a Buddhist point of view, the whole of Buddhist bodhicitta, the idea of striving for enlightenment in order to be of benefit to all beings, makes absolutely no sense if you've only got one lifetime.
Do you think, Jetsuna, that to be Buddhist, it is enough to practice and not necessary to believe?
Well, I mean, you can call yourself Buddhist. There's nothing which is saying you can't. And if you take refuge in the Buddha, the teaching, and the community, then that makes you officially a Buddhist. But you're throwing out most of the Dharma. I mean, that's, if you're happy with that, then maybe be well and happy. As long as you try to be a good person, it's enough. But personally, I think that we should think there is going to be a future life. Then we will try to do the best we can. If there is a future life, we will be glad that we made the effort. And if there isn't, then anyway, we led a good life. But, you know, I mean, there's nothing that there's no dogma which says you have to believe this or you don't have to believe that. But without karma and rebirth, and that whole idea of this endless cycle, so much of the emphasis of Buddhism doesn't make sense. But of course, you can call yourself Buddhist, nothing to stop you doing that.
Jetsuna, you say in the same book compiled by Dr. Jacques Vigne, you say in page 17, if we want to save the world, we have to save ourselves first. So my question, is it first possible and realistic to want and then to be able to save the world? And what can be done to reconcile this idealism with reality?
The point is that you know, from a Buddhist perspective, we have a long way ahead of us. You know, I mean, we have so many lives to accomplish wisdom and to accomplish the unconditional compassion. So we shouldn't be too much in a hurry. You know, I feel that everything is impermanent. And gradually, we transform. It doesn't happen overnight, just like that. You know, we can intellectually understand everything, but to really take it from the head down to the heart so that we really transform, takes time. But nonetheless, I honestly feel we should not be depressed because there's still so much goodness in the world. And we should focus more on the goodness. Somebody just sent me today, this evening actually, a thing about Lebanon and how there's a big shortage in a lot of medicines that people really need and that they can't get. And how now there's all this kind of website, I guess, where if you need certain medicines and your local supply doesn't have it, that other people will try to find it for you and give it to you. I mean, they're not even asking you to pay for it. They're just wanting, if you need this medicine, they will do everything they can to get it to you. So in that way, they were saying how in the Lebanon now, because of the crisis, it's bringing out the goodness in people, to be kind, to be generous, to think beyond themselves and to do what they can for others. So I think we shouldn't just focus in on all that's wrong, that we also should recognize, you know, how much goodness, inherent goodness there is in everybody really. And is often brought out at a time of great trauma and tragedy. So, you know, slowly, we also transform, but slowly. It doesn't happen just, you know, just wanting it is not enough. You know, we have to, like any skill, it takes a lot of practice to master.
Jitsuna, is it fair to say that much of the stress that plagues our modern world comes from an excess of desire and the fear that it will not be fulfilled? Wouldn't the basic solution be to let all these dissolve in the luminous space of meditation and thus develop the capacity for spontaneous altruistic action?
Well, you know, obviously, if we all became enlightened, that would really help. I mean, to have a planet filled with beings of wisdom and compassion would be absolutely lovely, but it's not likely to happen. And the roots of greed and hatred in our psyche, as we said before, are very, very deep, you know, and they're kept in place by our fundamental egoic ignorance, you know, this sense of I at the center of everything, like a spider in the center of the web, and endlessly weaving the web around it. So this is our problem. I mean, you know, we know that. I like this, I don't like that, I want this, I don't want that. So to uproot and overcome these deep habits takes an awful lot of wisdom and insight. And conjoined with compassion, even, you know, even very sincere practitioners have a hard time transforming their mind. It just takes a lot of work because we have very, very deep negative emotions, which from a Buddhist point of view, we inherited from endless past lives, you know, and so therefore they're very deeply ingrained in our psyche. And it takes time to transform. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, really. So this is what meditation is for. I mean, it's for us to recognize what's going on in the mind and then gradually to change that, to transform that, you know, using our daily life also as our practice. People we come into contact with, either they're nice to us or they're not nice to us, how we respond to that, how we use that as part of our practice, part of our training. So, you know, it's an ongoing process, and this is what our life is for, to develop our innate wisdom, to develop our innate compassion, and to uncover that. I mean, it's all there inside us, but it's covered over.
Jitsuna, you tell the story of an old yogi who had written as a maxim on a wall of his room, neither meditation nor distraction. And you explain this maxim by another from the shaman, place the gaze on the mind without distraction or grasping. My question, how to practically achieve this and avoid at the same time the two opposites, distraction and sense?
Yeah, so when it talks about no meditation, what it means is that it's not a fabricated meditation, you know, with effort. You know, normally when we meditate, then we try to concentrate, we try to have single-minded, you know, concentration on the object and so forth. So no meditation means you don't do that. You just relax into this awareness of whatever arises, right? It's you know, without judgment, without trying to stop anything or follow anything, just sitting back and watching it, like somebody watching clouds in the sky. You know, you're not trying to change the clouds, you're just observing the clouds. And also the gaps in the clouds where you see the clear blue sky. So that is this relaxed awareness of whatever comes up, right? Distraction, on the other hand, right? No meditation, no distraction. Distraction means being carried away by our thoughts, right? So therefore, what we need is just to be aware, allowing whatever comes into the mind to pass through without any kind of judgment and without grasping it or rejecting it, right? Just knowing it and not getting caught up in it. So it's the awareness, we're resting in this basic awareness, this knowing quality of the mind. So then whatever comes up, thoughts, sounds, anything that comes, just pass it by. Someone said it was like being in a train and you're looking out of the train windows and, you know, you're passing the slums or you're passing beautiful countryside and you're just passing by. You're not getting out the train. Right? So it's like that, you know, you're not trying, oh, I've got to look out the window. You're just relaxing in your seat, watching the scene go by, but you're not engaging with that scene, right? We're just observing.
Jetuna, you advise to face the anger, page 18 of your book. So you advise to replay what made us angry and to watch it from a distance, like a movie. So we can try to see if we can replay the scenario of a different way. My question, is it in meditation that we have to do this and how to do it practically?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, if we get very upset and angry with somebody, you know, and then we feel bad about it. Afterwards, we think, oh dear, why did I say that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that again. You know, we don't feel good about ourselves. So then we can just sit down in our practice, relax, focus on the breath to calm us down. Then, okay, replay that episode again, like watching on TV, you know, just no judgments, no excuses, no trying to think, oh, well, what I was. Just try to really see how it was, remember how it was, and to be honest with ourselves, right? And see what really happened and why it wasn't good. Why that was not a good script, and why it made us feel regretful afterwards. You know, we don't feel good. So then we can try to imagine how we could have played it differently, how we could have responded more skillfully. What should I have said? What should I have done? You know, because then we're training mind with more positive habits, We got angry and upset and said bad things because we're habituated to being upset and angry. Now we are training the mind not to be. We are training the mind to be more patient, more skillful, more wise. So by replaying that, it's, you know, learning new habits, better habits. And next time we will maybe remember, I remember that was not the way to go, that we need to rewrite the script. And in this way, slowly we train ourselves how to be more skillful in our relationships with others and not come under the power of our anger as we would do in the past. I mean, it's all practice. Buddhists talk about practice all the time.
Voilà, donc on va faire 5 minutes de pause et puis ensuite on va prendre la seconde partie où je vais vous traduire directement. Voilà, parce que là il n'y a plus de texte écrit, on le fera un peu plus tard dans les jours qui viennent. Donc 5 minutes de pause maintenant. Voilà, à tout de suite.